Okay, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. So to keep you all waiting, well, to tell you the truth, when I first got to know about this ASEAN committee within the students in Cairo, Egypt, I was very pleased for this uh, such of arrangement within student community and student bodies. Okay, and I would like to pass down the greetings from my ambassador, Ambassador Tan Han Seng of Singapore Embassy in Cairo, Egypt, and I would like to send my thanks to my colleague, Miss Dalia Dewi, for joining us today, and all the students today for being here today. When I was asked to present with regards to what ASEAN has to offer, one thing came to my mind when I discussed this with my fellow student leaders of Perkamas and Singapore Student Community in Cairo. We thought of one very important issue that we need to bring forward. Often when we talk about working together, the first hurdle that we will have to overcome is to understand each other, to know each other better, to learn from each other's strength. لو نتعارف مع بعضنا بعضا ممكن يعني نتعامل بسهولة. عادة هناك مشكلة ومشاكل بيننا علشان ما لم نعرف يعني كان أي مجال يعني كان متميزين فيها من دول إلى دول. صح كده؟ صح. Alright. So from different countries we want to know the strength that each ASEAN community has. So with that regard, allow me to share with you all the Singapore experience. So mainly when we talk about ASEAN countries, people will acknowledge or know more of, for example, like the bigger country, Malaysia, for example, Indonesia. Alright, the big powers in the ASEAN of ASEAN. Hence, I would like to share with you what Singapore has developed and presented over the years, so that we can learn from each other and benefit from each other in the future. Alright, so this is the area of my presentation today. Okay. Now the first thing I want to share with you is the quote by the Prime Minister of Singapore, Mr. Lee Hsien Loong. Alright, one unique thing about Singapore, as we all know, that since its independence or since its founding, Singapore consists of multi-religious and multi-ethnicity. Alright, used to be part of the Malayan Peninsula. Alright, Tanah Melaya. Alright, then it gained its independence, and we have indigenous people from of Chinese descent, of Indian descent, and also technically for myself, my forefathers came from Banjarmasin.
Banjarmasin?
Yes. Alright, so we have mixture of backgrounds and ethnicity. So part of us come from Indonesia, part of us come from Malaysia, etc. So the role of Singapore, or rather what Prime Minister Lee Hsien Loong and his forefathers, the leaders of Singapore who came before him, wanted to do is to make sure that this diversity is embraced. This is what we want for ASEAN as well. Now we are diverse community. We have one from Indonesia, Philippines, Laos, we have from Cambodia, and list goes on in 10 countries. What we want to learn from each other, what we want to have from each other is to embrace this diversity. Because often now what we have is we don't really embrace each other's diversity. When we don't have that kind of attitude, then for us to move forward will become rather difficult. Alright, so we respect each other's differences, we embrace the diversity, and we plan our way forward. Alright, so this is what Singapore had tried to do, and we are successful in doing this. So there are three contexts I want to share with you with regards to my presentation today, the Singapore experience as we call it. One is to understand Singapore's political system. I will just go through briefly. Most of the information that you will find here today are the information that you can gather from our official sites and information. Alright. Second is the Singapore education system. If anything that Singapore would want to share with all of you, if any of the Singaporean students here would want to share with all of you, is the progress that we have achieved in our education system. Alright? And last but not least, we'll briefly go through the Singapore economic system. Okay? Now, the first point I wanted to share with all of you. Now, in Singapore earlier, as I mentioned, we have diverse religious groups. Even for Muslims, we have different sects of Muslim in Singapore. Right? Ranging from Sunnis to Shiis to Ahmadi and so on. Alright, it's not only the Sunnis in Singapore per se. Alright, and we have people from different religion, but over the years we managed to overcome these differences and plan our way ahead to make sure that by the end of the day, the country is successful. Whatever we do, we want to benefit the country and the community. No matter with disregard our races, our religious differences, whatever we do, we will move forward for the progress of the community, the Singaporean community. So in Singapore, one thing that I want to stress with you all today when it comes to the political system is that we embrace diversity. And when we talk about embracing diversity, we have this freedom of belief. Alright? Now, Singapore government provides numerous platforms for religious activities. This might be new to some of us who are not conversant in Singapore per se. Because when we talk about Singapore, عادة يعني كثير من يفكر على أن هذه الدولة يعني ممكن اتجاهاتهم يعني اتجاه سيكولر مثلا. اوكي؟ واتجاه السيكولر لا يعطي الفرصة أو المجال لنمو الدين في هذه الدولة، وهذا أفكار خاطئة. This is something that we want to address and rectify, because most people would say that a secular state will not encourage the development or the growth of a religion. Okay, Singapore works otherwise. Alright, in Singapore, our Singapore government provides numerous platforms for these activities. And if you to go back in history, before the independence, when Singapore was still under the colony of the British Empire, okay, the British Empire bring about or establish what we call the Mohammedan Advisory Board. You can go through this in history, Singapore history. The Mohammedan Advisory Board and also the Hindu Endowment Board amongst the establishment advisory board design or came up in Singapore. So what do we do? For example, like myself as a representative or as a representative from the Islamic Religious Council of Singapore, or we know as Majlis Ugama Islam Singapura MUIS, we give thoughts, feedbacks, and ideas to our political leaders, our ministers. Any policies that they want to build up with regards to the Singaporean Muslim community, we will be at the forefront. We will be at the forefront to advise them what's best for the Muslim community in Singapore. Alright, so the relationship between religious bodies, association is very close with the government itself. Alright, in contrary to what people might think. And the Singapore government shows its support for religious development. For example, when you focus into the development of Muslim community in Singapore, it's not suppressed. It was very supported. We were very supported by the government. They set up the Islamic Religious Council of Singapore, as I mentioned. Whenever the government needs any advice with regards to policies reflecting or having an effect to the Muslim community in Singapore, they will ask the Islamic Religious Council of Singapore for advices and way forward. Right. We have established a Sharia court to handle the matters of the Muslim communities in Singapore. Alright. And we have what we call the Mendaki and Mosque Building Fund. Now Mendaki Fund is very unique because why? One of the highlights or one of the stand that we brought forward when we discussed this in Parliament is that we want to make sure that every Muslim in Singapore will receive proper assistance when it comes to education. So Mendaki Fund, for example, like working adults in Singapore, Muslim working adults in Singapore like myself, would have to contribute a portion or a significant amount on a monthly basis for this Mendaki Fund, so as to make sure that Singaporean students who are in need, who want to pursue their studies, whether in secondary education or mahala جامعة مثلا, يصلوا على هذه المساعدة من الحكومة from the Mendaki Fund, through the Mendaki Fund. For example, like my sister, who is currently studying in the National University of Singapore, taking political science, receive a full scholarship through the Mendaki Fund. So this is one of the ways the government is helping the community, the Muslim community in particular, to excel in whatever they do. And the Mosque Building Fund, of course, each and every working Muslim Singaporean will contribute some amount of their monthly allowance to make sure that the mosque in Singapore continues to run programs, activities, and also well maintained and managed. So these are the evidences that shows the government of Singapore embraces the diversity. Now going through the Singapore education system. As I said earlier, is if there's one thing that Singaporeans will be proud of and will want to share with all of you is our education system. Now, the Singapore government emphasizes very much on the need of education. هذا يعني كما نقول معقول لازم كيف نتقدم ونجد الثقافة بدون التعليم بدون الدراسة. Then the government of Singapore will ensure that every Singaporean will receive proper education system. And how they do this is through one, subsidized rates for indigenous citizens. For example, like Malays, we are known as the indigenous people of Singapore. So whenever a Malay would want to attend school, the fees are subsidized, heavily subsidized, okay, because we are indigenous people of Singapore. And the government also introduced subsidies from the early as 1960s, 1965 to be exact, introduced a system where even textbooks, okay, now the schools are made subsidized and they help with regards to paying the monthly fees. Now the government said that that's not enough because there are students who can't afford to purchase textbooks. So even textbooks the government subsidized, provide subsidies for education, this kind of education. Second, there's a significant percentage set aside for research and development and enhancement in Singapore's education system. Now I will stress on later, I will share with you the development of the religious education in Singapore. الدراسة التعليم الديني هذا المهم، يعني لا نستطيع أن نقول يعني كما كنا فيها. الآن يعني لازم نتفوق لأن الأمور تغير وتتقدم. إذا علينا كالأساتذة مثلا لما عدنا إلى بلادنا نريد أن نجهز يعني الطلبة حتى يكون أحسن منا. وما هي الطرق التي أخذنا يعني في سنغافورة؟ هذا إن شاء الله سأعطيكم بعدين. Okay. So when it comes to research and development, the Singapore government has spent $11.7 million Singapore dollars put aside for its budget for the National Research Foundation, and it has allocated 10.6 billion for the Ministry of Education to run schools, to run the activities, and to continuously upgrade the teachers who are in these national schools. Okay, because as we know it, for the national curriculum, for example, like subjects like mathematics, English language, science, and whatnot, our curriculum is similar to the ones, or technically is taken from the Cambridge curriculum. Okay, so we need to constantly change and make sure that it's up to date. And the curriculum, the education curriculum in Singapore for national schools continue to change, seeing the situation at least 5 years once. Alright, so the education system in Singapore change every 5 years once. So if that is the case for national schools, so for the madrasas, alright, for the madrasas we can't afford to let ourselves stay stagnant and in one level in particular, saying that this is our curriculum from the 1990s and we're going to keep this until يوم القيامة والله أعلم. مش عايزين هكذا صح؟ مش ينفع خالص. أمور تتغير. So today or recently the education, the madrasa education in Singapore changed to make sure that our subjects, our students stay competitive and they are on the national level, and I will share with you shortly, inshallah. And just to share with you, Singaporean students rank top 5 in the world by OECD, or what is known as Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, in terms of mathematics, science, and reading. And Alhamdulillah, recently the National University of Singapore is ranked top 10 universities in Asia and also top 100 in world ranking. And this is something that you can find online as well. Alright? So more importantly, the religious education in Singapore. And this is very interesting that I want to perhaps find some time to learn from each and every one of you who come from different backgrounds, come from different countries. You might want to share your experience in religious education. نتبادل الآراء مثلا. ونعود إلى بلادنا لو هناك أي شيء ممكن نأخذ منكم نتعلم منكم إن شاء الله. وهكذا يعني كيفية النمو يعني بيننا في آسيا. Okay, when we talk about religious education in Singapore, now with the support of the Singapore government and with the assistance of the Islamic Religious Association of Singapore, we developed this system called the joint madrasah system. Now, what is the joint madrasah system? For your information, in Singapore currently, we are left with 6 madrasahs. Okay, we have 6 madrasahs for Singaporean Muslim community. I was from madrasah myself. Okay, I grew up in one of the madrasahs. كنت من المدرسة الدينية الإسلامية. ما عرفت يعني لو كان أعرف اسم هذه المدرسة. في بعض يعني الرؤساء مثلا يعني the religious minister of Brunei, if I'm not mistaken, and one of the muftis in Sabah, Malaysia, graduated from the Madrasah Al Islamiyah. Okay, they are part of our alumni. So the madrasah system had to go through challenges. Now, why do we have to have these changes? To change from the traditional method of approach in religious education to have future and more enhancement. Okay. For example, if I were to when we ask our the Mufti of Singapore a question, before we embark into this joint madrasah system, we revamped, we revisited our curriculum. Okay, we asked the opinions of our seniors, our scholars, our Mufti, for example, and we asked him, Mufti, if you want to talk about the current religious inquiries submitted or forwarded to the office of Mufti in Singapore or to yourself, it will revolve around which area? المسائل الدينية الحالي يعني يدابر في أي المسألة يعني مسألة اعتقادية، مسألة أساسية، مسألة يعني مثلا أمور يعني فرض عين مثلا. هل ما زلنا في هذه يعني مشكلات ولا قد تغير الأمور؟ Okay, so the Mufti of Singapore said to us that now, although there are questions, there are concerns, there are concerns brought up by the community with regards to normal activities, the problems of fardu ain, how to what is halal, what is haram, the usual. There are. We begin to see some changes in approaches or in questions posed by the Muslim community in Singapore. For example, people start to ask this question: what is the hukum of wagyu meat? You know what's wagyu meat? It started off in Japan, okay, where cows, to make the meat more tender, alright, they feed the cow with sake. The cow is fed with sake to make the meat of the cow more tender. Alright? So the cow is halal, of course. But then again, the cow has been bred differently than normal. So what's the hukum? So future religious scholars, especially in the context of Singapore, could not just afford to go through texts that we have today. Because some of the issues might not be addressed in text, with all due respect. It's the change of time. So the future Singaporean scholars, the students of madrasahs, should not just memorize the adillah, rather to understand the adillah and they can istinbat the ahkam properly. So this is what we want to achieve through the joint madrasah system. And through the joint madrasah system, what we wanted to do, or introduce, is to have an integrated and holistic learning of both Islamic and academic sciences. Now, Professor Tariq Ramadan, for example, if you have heard about Professor Tariq Ramadan in one of his many speeches, shared his opinion, saying that when it comes to the progress of religious matters, the ulama, the religious scholars, could not afford to sit on their own and act on their own. Rather, the religious scholars need to work closely with the scholars of academic field, scientists, for example, or researchers, sociologists. We cannot afford to work on our own anymore because change of context, we need more expertise. Alright? So when it comes to religious education in Singapore, we also want to train to make sure that our students, they are not only conversing in religious matters, but they have a good grasp and understanding on scientific issues, for example, and modern issues, for example. Okay, this is what we want to try to achieve through the joint madrasah system to have an integrated and holistic approach or program. Second is to have a constant development program for madrasah teachers. Now, before this, the madrasah teachers, like people like my seniors who studied in Egypt, Al-Azhar, مثلا, أو من سعودية مثلا, أو من أردن مثلا, عادوا إلى سنغافورة, يعني صاروا أساتذة يعني في المدرسة وانتهى الأمر. وانتهى الأمر. We go back to our countries, we start teaching, and we stay that way for the rest of our life. Now we say that no, we can't afford to do that. And as I mentioned earlier, the government ensures that our curriculum, our syllabus is revised within every 5 years. Alright? And there's a constant upgrading process for the teachers in national schools. So for our madrasa teachers, we want to have the same approach as well. So through the JMS system that we have established with the help of Singapore government, we have managed to send our teachers for more training in presentation skills, in pedagogy skills, okay, to make sure that students today will receive differently from what we have received yesterday, because the issues, the context change, and we want a constant upgrade for our teachers as well. Alright? And there are numbers of our madrasah teachers who were sent to Indonesia, for example, for their postgraduate studies. Okay, some of them are also sent to other Middle Eastern countries for their postgraduate studies to make sure that they always upgrade themselves. نحن عرفنا يعني أن إخواننا من إندونيسيا وماليزيا مثلا كثير من يعني والله أئمة الشيوخ يعني أخذوا ماجستير و يعني دكتوراه على طول. فإحنا في سنغافورة عايزين نكون مثلكم إن شاء الله. وأدعو لنا بالتوفيق إن شاء الله. Okay. And one more thing that I want to share with all of you is how the government and the Islamic Religious Council of Singapore tried to establish the religious institution is through the performance or through having what we call Waqaf Ilmu. And I'm hoping that the internet connection is good, because there's something I want to share with all of you. This is something rather new. Okay, what is Waqaf Ilmu? It might be new to most of us or some of us, and I'm not too sure whether it's available in different countries, in the Asean countries. So perhaps we can watch this presentation. Bilogha Malawi ya. Bagaimana terjemah bilogha Inggris?
Saya Faiz dan umur saya 12 tahun.
Apa?
Saya tinggal di Jum'is bersama keluarga saya. Setiap hari saya bangun pada pukul 5 pagi untuk bersiap sedia. Ibu bawa ekor-ekor, jemput dan kuih kering untuk jual di pasar. Selepas ayah meninggal 3 tahun lalu, Faiz bantu mak setiap pagi dan tolong jaga adik-adik. Asyhadu an la ilaha illallah wa asyhadu anna Muhammadar Rasulullah. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi. Ustaz kata Faiz sekarang ketua keluarga. Guru-guru Faiz selalu berikan perangsang agar cekal dan bersyukur dengan pemberian Allah. saya jauh. Perjalanan 1,5 jam setiap hari.
Oh.
Faiz suka sekolah, mengaji Al-Quran, matematik, sains, dan belajar perkara-perkara baru. Hari ini keputusan PSLE akan diumumkan. Dulu ayah selalu pesan supaya rajin belajar.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Alhamdulillah, the result are in, and this year is our most improved result. Alhamdulillah.
Saya harap keputusan saya baik. Jadi bolehlah saya bentuk keluarga di masa depan.
Tanya, keputusan awak semula baik. Awak telah menunjukkan peningkatan yang baik. Kenapa baik?
Saya gembira dengan keputusan saya. Tapi saya sedih kerana keluarga saya tidak dapat menyertai hari ini. Ibu perlu bekerja dan ayah sudah tiada lagi.
Jangan sedih, guys. Saya pasti arwah ayah awak tetap berbangga.
Okay, I think the internet connection is not on our side today. For us to continue this story, and some tears are trying to fall off now. But nevertheless, we pause it for a while and allow me to share with you what's happening in front. Now, on the contrary of what most people would think that there are Singaporeans who face difficulties in making sure that their education continues, right? In the cosmopolitan city, country such as Singapore. So, in order to ensure that the madrasah education remains, and also to ensure that every Muslim will receive adequate, proper religious education, the Waqaf Ilmu set up by the Islamic Religious Council of Singapore was introduced, alright, to have a sense of waqaf and to make sure that and to use the returns of what we receive from waqaf institutions to further support the development of our madrasas in Singapore.